All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Greg LaBeouf here with you. We got the full crew back. We got Coach Dustin, Coach Brad with us. Everybody's back. We've had a couple off weeks where we just had busy schedules, and so we missed a couple podcasts over the last couple weeks, over the last month. But we are back and back on track. And tonight, this podcast is interesting because it's fairly simple, but it's a really powerful concept. And again, I think it's something that a lot of people just they don't maybe they don't have a framework for how to achieve this very simple but very important part of threat assessment. So tonight I want to jump into this. So I titled this one called "Watching the Herd." All right, everybody, stick with us. We're going to break this down, give you an easy framework that you can apply instantaneously and increase your and your family's safety. Stick with us. Every day I hear more stories of good people being brutally assaulted. And like I said, in the quick little setup to this, this is a very simple skill. Everyone talks about situational awareness. They talk about observational awareness, which is obviously a massive part of situational awareness. And maybe I'll just say this, that there's kind of three ways that you are going to perceive a threat, right? Your sensory faculties, we have five senses, right? Smell, touch, taste, hearing. And what I want people to recognize maybe first is that three of those senses are how you are most likely going to identify a threat. You're going to see a threat, you're going to hear a threat, or you're going to feel a threat. And what does it mean to feel a threat? That means that you're the messenger of intuition, right? You have these instincts. You can just pick up on this energy. It can be something that you see that your brain may sensory gate, right? It might be something you hear that you sensory gate, but it doesn't mean that that information isn't reaching you or isn't being pulled in. Our sensors, our senses are always picking up information. The reticular activator is the part of the brain that determines what you sensory gate and what is brought to your attention. That is a filter, and that filter can be trained, it can be developed. We don't ever want to sensory gate information that is making us aware of the potential of danger. Okay, so as you train, one of the things that we call it activating your radar. The more you train, the more you learn what's called the PIN index. PIN just means pre-incident indicators, where it's the study of the body language, the behavioral patterns, and the communication patterns, and it is ultimately how we measure intent to harm in other human beings. So we develop this filter. We activate the radar. Okay, now one of the things that I want to talk about with tonight is I want to give people a very simple framework for how you I call it, the term I use is thin slice. How are you when you're out in this world where we are being bombarded with millions of pieces of stimulus? Just think about how many times we find ourselves surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of strangers. And yet our brain and our senses, the radar is activated. But how are we processing? How do we ensure that we won't miss something? Okay, well, I'm going to give you a framework for observational awareness today. Okay, so hopefully what you get from what I just said is that I'm dividing this up. There is situational awareness, and we have to talk about a lot of different senses. Tonight, I actually want to cue in on and just drill down onto observational awareness. Okay, so maybe before I even jump into laying out this framework, I'll just let both Dustin or Brad or whoever, if you guys want, maybe just cue in a little bit here on how important just overall situational and observational threat assessment skill sets are, or what your guys' take on developing the reticular activator, developing your threat filter, and having that kind of quote unquote radar activated, how important you guys feel that is for people to learn, what role it plays in your weaponizing process, and how you guys not only keep yourself safe, but as your family and others as well.
Yeah, for me, I think that it is the utmost importance. It's like your tripwire or your first line of contact, or your first point of contact. If you don't have that radar, and you don't have that ability to pick up serious critical incident or threat of violence, and you're oblivious to it, um, you're not you're always going to be on the reactive side of the dichotomy, right? If you're able to say, hey, and again, Like, I know that we don't want to get into like paranoia versus prepare. Like, it's not that. It's just you have your radar set because you understand what a threat is, and more importantly, you understand what a threat isn't. So you don't have to live in this, oh, everything's a threat, because it's not. Let's be honest, it's not everything is a threat. And then if it is, then you also know what level of threat is this, right? So I think it gives you the ability to assess and then make a decision. And if you that decision to take instantaneous decisive action, whatever that could be or whatever that needs to be, and then that's it, you know. But if you don't have that ability, you don't have that radar, you may not be able to make a decision, and then that's when I think that you could have a catastrophic event in your life where it's, again, violence doesn't ask, you know. And if you see it beforehand, you don't have to wait for it to ask to take an action, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I know Dustin's going to want to jump in. I just want to echo a couple of things you said. I love the idea, the analogy of a tripwire, because again, if somebody sets up a tripwire, it's an early warning system, maybe
Right.
on a perimeter of something. So again, it's like you connected it to like you're setting a filter of a radar. Not everything is a threat. And not everything is going to trip your tripwire. So not everything is going to, kind of activate that. So I just really like that analogy. I think that really rings clear to what I want to do tonight. I want to give people a framework so that they can have early warning indicator systems, tripwires, activate that radar and allow us to take that early decisive action, which we know then more dramatically impacts the incident, right? So I really, really like those analogies. Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to just speak to radar virtually the same way as Brad, so I'll kind of leave that. He did a good job of explaining it. The only other point I was going to kind of make is that I think a lot of people make the mistake of, like, you say this, like, well, why is observational awareness so important? Why is situational awareness so important? And then you want to tell someone why. And I think so many people are like, yeah, I know that already. Like, oh yeah, I've heard about that lots. I'm good. Like, I get it. And it's like, do you? Like, I can sit down and listen to two people have a conversation in French, Italian, Spanish, Japanese, whatever. I can listen to it all day long. I have no idea what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's like listening to something, seeing something, picking up on something. That doesn't mean you understand it. So I think it just comes right back to our whole thing is violence is its own language. So it's like, in order to do these things, you still have to really understand and own the problem, which is violence, in our context. And I think too many people just kind of glaze over that and just like, oh yeah, no, I know, I get it. So yeah, I think that was kind of the one thing other than the radar that just really hit me is how quick people are to dismiss it when it's like, no, you really have to speak the language for any of this to even be relevant, for you to be able to do everything Brad talked about. It's like, well, you got to understand what the hell you're seeing, feeling, thinking, all of it, right? So
Yeah, no, I love that because again, listening and seeing doesn't automatically equal interpreting, and that's kind
yeah,
of what you're talking about, right? You can
yeah,
sit there and listen to something, see something, but it doesn't mean you can fucking interpret it. And add,
yeah.
let's
What
make
does
it
it mean?
maybe be more accurate. It doesn't mean you can interpret it correctly because we all know
Yep.
that you can interpret it in the wrong way, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Go to New York and listen to someone from the Bronx. Go into a bar, listen to people just having regular conversations, and you swear to
Yeah,
God that there's a goddamn catastrophic fight about to break out because everybody's loud talking and aggressive, and yet absolutely everybody's just everyone's on baseline. Everything is okay, right?
yeah.
So culturally things are different, but that's right. So interpreting becomes different, right? So. Listen, I just wanted to set that up because, again, we want to encourage people. Part of the weaponization process, again, these are things that happen pre-contact cues. This is life and death stuff. This is not all just about what happens when things go physical. It's kind of like there's an element of bodyguarding in this. If you're a good bodyguard, all of your work is happening to avoid anything physical happening, to avoid an absolute crisis, right?
Yeah, you're
Bodyguards don't
you're
spring into
you're
action. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you're not a good bodyguard if your only move is to jump in front of the bullet.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more depth. So we are talking about this tonight. Okay. So let's just jump into this because, like I said, it's a very simple framework. I really hope everyone listening to this. I really believe that everyone listening to this is gonna greatly benefit from this. Okay. So let me just kind of break. I call this watching the herd. So I kind of had a little bit of a setup. Imagine if you are out, let's go like something like West Edmonton Mall, what used to be the largest mall in the world is still probably within the top, I don't know, 8 to 10 for sure in the world. So, you can go there on a busy time. It's just massive, right? And this could be anywhere. But watching the herd means this. Here's a little trick. What you do is actually break down groups of people into herds. Okay, so like for example, if you just take a drive through the countryside, you can see a herd of cattle. You can see, a herd of sheep. You can see horses. You can see, so just in the animal kingdom, you're often going to see animals clustered. Okay, and now it is not abnormal to see a large group of cows together, and then you look over and say, oh, look, there's a breakaway group, 3-4 cows over there. Oh, look in that far corner, there's a couple horses together. And then, of course, you see a random horse or cow out grazing on its own, a little off from the tribe. Now, or from the herd. Now, the first thing that we would do is when we talk about watching the herd is we would think, okay, there is herd mentality even in human beings, but the first thing we're going to do is assess the environment. So that's step number one in watching the herd. What is the environment? So let's take an example of a couple things, right? You take your family, we're coming up to some nice spring evenings, so you take your family and say, hey, let's head out and go for a walk. So you're just walking through your neighborhood, you're walking on some of the bike or hiking trails in your city or close to your neighborhood or whatever, so you're walking on a pathway. This could be when you're driving to or from work or you're taking the kids to school. There is commuter traffic, there's rush hour traffic, there's, just your general Saturday afternoon shopping traffic. So there is driving. There is school drop-offs, school pickup. There is arriving at work. So you drive to work, and for some people, they park on the street in front of their building. Not everybody has a company parking lot, so to speak. Some people park in a parkade. So I'm just listing off a bunch of different environments, right? Now, again, we could take our kids to a physical park or something like that, a skating rink, a movie theater. So step one in watching the herd is there is the environment, okay? Now, step two off this is to, when you walk into this environment, identify the herds. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm going to take something that could have a mix of herds here, right? Let's take a park. So maybe we'll combine the walking path. So it's a nice spring evening or a summer evening, and you say, hey, let's go for a walk. And you and the family are taking a walk down the path. And you say, well, you know what? We'll head over to the local school. There's a park there. The kids can, we'll stop off. The kids can play at the park for a little bit, and then we'll make our way home. So when you're out for a walk, on that walking path, let's identify some herds. Well, if you and your family are out for that walk, there are probably other moms and dads and children out for a walk. So you can identify that and go very clearly. You can see people from probably 6 blocks away, and you see a mother and a dad, a mom and a dad, and you see their little kid, and they're on the bicycle with the training wheels, and the one that got the baby in the carrier, and you go, there's a little herd. You identify that herd, no problem. Then you may just off the path a little bit, there's the grassy area, and you see a couple teens, and maybe they're 12 or 13, preteens, young teens, and they're kicking around a soccer ball, or they're playing badminton, or just whatever they're doing, and you can tell right away that, okay, so that's a little herd, and you can tell that they belong to one of those backyards. They might be in the backyard, jumping on the trampoline, whatever it is. While you're walking, or maybe as you get close to the park, there may be some construction going on. Now, maybe it's city workers that are pruning trees or planting trees, depending on the time of year, emptying garbage cans. So, maybe they have their city truck there, or maybe they're just in a construction vest or something like that. But now you have a herd that you would identify as workers. Now, as you get close to the park, there's usually benches around the park. And so you take a look and you see men, women sitting on these benches. You see people 15 feet away sitting underneath a tree. Now, what I'm getting at is when you first talk about environment, and we listed a couple of environments, a pathway and a park, you are now looking at the herds of people and you are clustering them. And then what you're doing, so that's the first part is assess the environment. The second part is to identify the herds within that environment. And now the third part is to ask yourself or to analyze, are they congruous? Are they congruous with the activities associated with that environment? And this, as many people listening to this, hopefully what you feel is that the simplicity in this, how quickly your brain can identify patterns that are congruous with environments. But what I would challenge you on is that although, yes, you sit there and go, well, that makes complete fucking sense, Greg, this is super easy. Very few people do this. Because when you're out for a walk with your family, you are consumed with the conversation that you're having with your wife. You're being distracted by the kids, or you're watching little Sally ride her bike for the first time, or you're worried that she's gonna fall and scrape her knee. Maybe you hear the dog, big dog is coming down the path. Someone walking a big dog, and you're like, oh shit, can they control that dog? Is that dog on a leash? Like, there is lots of life factor distractions, or when people get self-absorbed into their own little world, that actually prevent this type of observational assessment from actually happening, or happening when it needs to. Okay, so I'll let you guys jump in on any of this if you want to. You can just comment on anything that I'm saying or any part of it, please. But I just, again, I'm trying to lay out, and this is, by the way, what I would call your primary observational assessment. Environment, okay, herds, divide them, classify them into herds, and then finally, is this congruous? Okay, so if you guys want any comments on anything I've said so far, we're not that deep into it, but anything on that?
Yeah, you know what, like, I love one of the words that you've used, baseline, right? Because, I remember the book, I forget the author, Left the Bang, and he talked a lot about a baseline, establishing a baseline, just like you could establish a baseline for an environment, because this is a normal baseline, right? A group of people, individual, like a herd of people. And, one of the words that he used is like, when it's not congruous, he's like, oh, there's an anomaly there, because it doesn't fit the baseline of the environment, doesn't fit the baseline of a group of people. Do you know what I mean? Or that baseline of group of people, or the herd is acting weird. There's an anomaly there. Let's identify what that is. So it's very easy. I like the terminology because it's very easy to identify when you're not trying to. I think it just paints a clear picture, like we talked about. You think in pictures, right? Yeah. And it's like it just attaches something to it to allow you to put your focus and attention to. Yeah. That's an anomaly. What makes it an anomaly? Oh, actually, it's nothing. Oh, maybe it is something that it needs warranted extra attention. But again, it's that thin slicing that you mentioned. That I like those two terminologies, baseline and anomaly, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and just to fill in a blank on that, there, when you have your environment and you have your first observational assessment of the environment, so we're out for a walk, whatever, playing at the park. Then you're identifying herds within that park, thin slicing that, clustering these groups of people, and then you are asking yourself, is this congruous? Well, what you are pulling in, the three areas, again, are body language, communication patterns, and behavior. Those are the three areas that will always, have pre-indications of things that constitute off baseline behavior or anomalies, whatever term we want to put to that. Now, once we've kind of got these first three skill sets, this process is happening, the first part of the framework. What will happen is many times you will find these anomalies, or you will find indicators or herds, or so a single or group of like a part of the herd or a single person, and an outlier, so to speak. And what you will do then is you would shift into secondary observations. Now, if we're at a park with our kids and our kids are playing in the park, and my wife and I are sitting on the bench and we're having a chat, I'm observing, I see over there's another, a couple, over there's a dad. And right away, it's like, I already know whose child that dad, I know who his child is. Because you're watching the father watch his daughter or his son, or you're hearing them, hey, dad, look at me, or the dad's actively playing with him, engaging, whatever it is, or the mom is. But right away, again, you're clustering herds. That child belongs with this parent, that's the grandparents, that's this. These are all things that are very, very easy to, connect the dots on these things. If, again, your radar is activated and your reticular activated, the filter is built to do such things. Imagine just real quick here, if we just put in a little insert, imagine if there's a crisis and there's all of a sudden a car accident, all of a sudden there's an explosion, a propane bottle blows up at a nearby house, or there's a fire breaks out at the school, or I don't know, whatever it is. In chaos, even if you're talking 20 or 30 people, things can get very chaotic. And you could have grandparents and young kids and grandchildren and stuff. And, it's always nice to know and connect the dots of who's with who. Because that just makes it easier to all of a sudden, manage any type of critical incident. Okay, so you could just, there's connections too. But as I sit there in that park and I'm identifying people, we notice a couple, let's say, outliers. So there's a guy over there that's sitting underneath the tree. And so now I look at this guy and say, okay, that guy automatically, there's a bit of a red flag. Nothing big, but there's a bit of a red flag. What it does is it kicks my filter. So it's kind of like a magnifying glass. You're looking underneath it at 1 times. Then you kind of see that anomaly, and all of a sudden it kind of clicks to 5 times zoom. And so now the secondary observation is we look and say, what is this guy doing? Is this guy looking up in the trees and like watching birds? Is this guy cloud watching? Is this guy, feeding squirrels or pigeons or some shit? Is this guy just mellowing out under the tree and relaxing? Is he got his earbuds in? Is he listening to something? Is he just sitting in the sunlight? You know what I mean? Taking in some vitamin D. But again, all these questions are very simple to answer. But if you don't ask the question, you never get the answer. And that is often where really critical information is missed, because a simple question wasn't asked. How many times do people say things like, oh, that's so easy? And so, okay, really? Tell me how. And then there is no answer. We often dismiss many things as like, oh, this is so simple. And yet, it is not answerable. They oh, I could do that, no problem. Oh, really? Please show me. And yet, they have no skill set. They have no ability to do that. That happens all the time. Again, the 5 signs of denial: rationalize, justify, minimize, make excuses, or flat out refuse something. We rationalize or justify all the time that we can do all these amazing things that we cannot do. You know what I mean? Take a bike, take an old BMX bike, go out, walk down the street, find any man over the age of 35 or over the age of 40 and say, hey man, can you do a Papa Wheelie? Oh, fuck yeah, man. I could catwalk that thing. 95% of them are going to the hospital, at least the medical walk-in clinic, because they used to be able to do it maybe, and even what they're remembering they could do has actually been exaggerated and blown out of proportion. Right? Silly analogy, but most people really don't have the skill sets that they think they have. Right? And I'm no different in lots of areas in my life. I probably still think I could jump my bike like Evel Knievel back in the day. And I remember I broke both my wrists back in the day. So I'm terrified to think of what would happen to me today. Okay, so again, secondary. So this herd. So now we go from this massive herd, and we very quickly thin slice, and we organize those herds. You can just be in a mall of thousands of what? Shoppers. And then yet all of a sudden you see a group of teens or young adults or a single male individual or a single female individual, and right away you go, they're not shopping. And now listen, could they just be hanging out at the mall? They could be, but they're going to get kicked to what? Secondary stage observation. It's like going through TSA security. You go through general security, and then all of a sudden, there's a red flag, there's an indicator. Sometimes it's just random. You just got selected to get, to head to secondary security. And now you're getting more questions asked. Now you're going through your luggage potentially, whatever it is. And sometimes secondary is just, they ask you 3 or 4 more questions and off you go. And sometimes, like I said, it's pop the suitcase, and sometimes it's, whatever the fuck it is. There's layers to this stuff. And so again, to have this filter of like, you can just very quickly take thousands of people. You could go to a festival, go to an outdoor concert. I mean, literally, it could be thousands of people. Drunk, chaotic, partying, not drunk, just music lovers, appreciation, whatever it is, fun seekers. And you can just literally divide these people into herds. And then you can find the singles or the outlying groups where you go, there is something different here. Again, move to secondary observation. And then we start asking questions. What are they doing? Are they doing something different than everybody else? Is that what cued me? Sometimes, you're at an outdoor concert, imagine like the blues festival. Is that what they do in Edmonton out on the side of the hill there? You know what I mean? I can't remember what it's called.
Folk fest.
Sure.
Yeah, the folk fest, whatever it is, right? But you have thousands of people all lined up on that hill, and 99.9% of them are there listening to music. So you're going to put them all into one herd because it's very easy to look and go, these are music lovers. But I guarantee there will be a tarp or a blanket or whatever. There will be a group of people, and you go, they're the partying herd. Oh yeah, they like listening to the music, but they don't really give a fuck about the music. The music is secondary to the socialization. You know what I mean? Like sometimes people are going, they run in the morning to put your tarps down, but if you see a certain person running, you go, I bet that guy's a partier. That looks like a fucking zebra. Zebras like to party. I'm gonna pick somewhere away from that person because I'm a music lover. Right? So again, just using analogies of how powerful this herd, like watching the herd observational framework becomes for people. And so literally you answer the questions. When they get kicked to secondary observation, you answer, what are they doing? And because really what you're asking is, are they a threat? Are they even the potential to become a threat? That's the question that you want to ask. I mean, why at customs move somebody to secondary? Again, either it was random or there is enough of a red flag to warrant a little bit deeper conversation. That's it. Sometimes it's much more than that, and sometimes that's all it is. It's just a couple extra questions. That is the mentality we must have. Okay? And now, if and when, so let's just progress this a bit. If you move them from primary observation is assess the environment, okay, divide into the herds, and then ask yourself, are these herds congruous in this environment? I'll throw one more analogy. Let's take a movie theater. Because much like a festival or a concert, there can be hundreds, if not thousands, of people on a busy night at the movie theaters. What's everybody there to do?
Watch a movie.
Yeah, fucking watch a movie. So there is a body language, there is a behavioral pattern, there's communication patterns of how people are talking and standing and interacting and things they're doing that are all zeroed in on watching a movie. That's what everybody's there to do. And so if all of a sudden you have something, again, assess the environment and then divide into the herds. And if you find an anomaly, or you see an outlier or a group of outliers, you are asking yourself, is their behavior congruous? If not, they get bumped to secondary observation. And this is all happening in your filter. In secondary observation, you're answering the question, are they a threat? What are they doing? And sometimes, like I said, these guys look like they're out celebrating something. You can tell they're out fucking at Earl's or whatever, having drinks before they came to the movie. You know what I mean? So, and right away it's like, that's where they're at. Not that alcohol and drunks could not escalate into a potentially a conflict, because, you can see these are the guys that are loud in the movie theater. Someone tells them to shush. They go, fuck, don't tell me to shut up, and blah, 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 blah. You have this antisocial fucking aggression type bullshit. So again, valuable for us to already know, but at the same time, again, we're also looking for, my point was these guys that have gone in and shoot up movie theaters. Does anybody think that with the framework that I'm putting forward, that you could have identified this outlier within a herd of movie watchers? Yeah, West Edmonton Mall has had, in the past, as well as in the recent past, multiple stabbings as well as machete attacks. The most recent that I'm aware of was on Family Day, where a father and his 14-year-old son were attacked. Do you think those guys, that herd, was there to shop? No. So if this dad and this father are walking through this mall or walking out of the mall or into the mall, whatever the circumstances had to be, well, you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of cars outside the mall. There's people coming, there's people going, but you can easily identify, much easier than most people think, if your framework is set up to go, where are my herd of shoppers? Where are my herd of just mall walkers? Where's my herd of just teens and shit hanging out? Where's my, bad guys that are potentially looking to target individuals for whatever nefarious purpose?
It's almost like one of these isn't like the others. You know,
Mhm.
like which one doesn't
Yeah,
fit?
back right back to Sesame Street, right?
You know, like something doesn't fit, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, and I believe that we all have that ability to have that thin slicing, you
Yeah.
know, and we might, oh, that doesn't really fit, but I'm just going to ignore it, because if I ignore it, then it isn't anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is
And I
obviously
think that I think on Brad's point, I think a lot of times that's subconscious as well.
Hmm.
Like it may not even people, see something and go, "Oh, geez, I wonder if that's something dangerous or bad." Oh well, I'm gonna just pretend I didn't see it. Like it's not like that. It's built into their everyday programming is to just put on the blinders and just literally ignore good and bad. Do you know what I mean? People just don't want to pay attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think denial is a huge part of this for sure.
Well, I think that we'll often talk about denial because it is a powerful coping mechanism that exists in all of us. We all use denial at certain times in our life because denial protects us from unwanted information. It protects us from maybe there's information that we somehow on a subconscious level know that we're not prepared to handle at this moment in time, and so denial has a certain amount of survivability. But when it comes to protecting yourself from violence and things like that, it has no survivable value. But I think the other thing to your point, Dustin, that I think is worth talking about there or right now during this conversation is that that's more my bigger point today is less about the denial and more about the fact that you won't watch the herd because you've never been trained to watch the herd. You have no framework. Like, and that's what I said. What we're laying out today, newsflash, like other than a couple little pieces I'm going to add on to the end, that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you today. If you think about groups of people in big situations and just go, listen, I'm in an environment, assess the environment, and now look around and look at and create herds. Is everybody
Well,
on this LRT just riding this LRT to get to or from work or to or from school or to or from a mall or something like that? Becomes easy to see. Then you look and you go, look at that guy. He's riding the LRT because he's probably homeless or to get warm or because he's, going to a neighborhood to probably steal cars or like, you know what I mean? Like you can just tell when you have an outlier, but then most people, that's when it leads into the question is what are they doing? Because sometimes it might just be a guy, it's cold outside, and go, that guy's riding it. And I can tell what he wants is he just wants to be warm. It's not going to be a threat to anybody, at least not at this point, but that's what he wants to do. And then there's other people that it's like, I don't even know if that guy knows he's on a fucking train. Like he is fucking out to lunch. So what is he, what is this guy doing? He's in the middle of a fucking delusion, right? A drug psychosis. That's pretty important for us to know. So, sorry. Most people, I think, though, when you go to the malls, you go to the movies, you're out for the walk with your family, you're watching the kids play at the park, you're front sight focused, just like you're shooting, you're front sight focused on your life. I've got, I'm at the mall to do what? Even if you just go, I'm just here to generally shop. You're excited to get in there and shop. Your brain is thinking about what stores you're going to visit and what you're kind of looking for and what you hope to find. And, we're going to go out and have lunch and it's going to be such a great day. Whatever the fuck it is, you're going to move. So sometimes it's not even necessarily denial in the beginning. I think if all of a sudden as the threat becomes more real, then people could turn to denial. But I think in the beginning, it is literally just you have not turned on your radar because you have never been taught how to do so.
And yeah, I think it's literally just you just have to set your filter because you take anybody, put them in that shopping mall, and if they're walking through the mall and all of a sudden they see smoke, it doesn't like every single person's going to respond the same way. They're going to look at that, bump that up to secondary observation, like, why is there smoke here? That is not congruous. Is that a fire? It doesn't take a ton of education and training to catch that. You don't have to walk into the mall going, is there any smoke? Any smoke? We're good. No smoke. Like that's not
100%.
what we're talking about. It's just the filter is set. If you see smoke, you look for fire.
Yeah, smoke
if there's no fire, you figure out what it is you carry on in life. Yeah. This is no different. It's like you're walking through the mall. You're not like looking. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, you're hurting 100%. People, but it starts to run in the background. It just becomes your built-in filter. And I think that's worth noting is we don't expect people to sit there and just consciously be like, this is this and this is this, and you're making notes. Like, no, like that's not what it is. It's just learning how to set and calibrate your filter for violence.
Yeah. I think that, just to build off of what you're saying is I'll go way back to probably one of our first conversations about weaponizing. And it's like, if you don't own the problem, you're probably not going to set the filter, right? So again, not living in denial, understanding that violence is out there, and then setting your filter because you've owned the problem. You
Yeah.
at least understand it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is literally like, again, smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. People have heard that from as long as they've been around. And it's the only thing different. This is figuring out what the smoke is to tell you there's violence, and then that sets the reticular activator, owning the problem. Everything you guys just said, right? So that is again part of what happens in our training program and in the weaponization process is you set the reticular activator. And remember, that's just a part of the brain that's your filter. Determines you have basically set a priority option, meaning never sensory gate anything that could even potentially be a threat to me. Just make me consciously aware of it. And it's no different than when you start feeling hungry, you get those little hunger pains, you all of a sudden start seeing fucking McDonald's and Burger King and pizzas and sushi. You start seeing all these places to eat because your reticular activator activates and goes, hey dude, you're hungry, find a source of food. Anyways, so what I want to do just to kind of go off this next. So step number 1, primary observation, is assess the environment. Start to divide people into herds, okay? Then look and say, are these congruous? Is there outliers? If there's outliers, whether it's a male, female, or a group, they kick up to secondary observation. Then when you start doing is say, listen, what are they doing? Discern their intent. Are they a threat to me? Now, if we get even the potential of saying, this could be, it's not right now, because most likely when you're doing this type of early observational assessment, it is not going to be a critical threat right at that moment. You are seeing things far ahead of the curve. So the next step after secondary assessment is if I go, yes, this could potentially be a threat to me, then what I do is I bump it up to my strategic assessment. And not to get too deep in this, but another word, strategies, because we're always strategy, tactics, and tools. Strategy first. A much simpler word for strategies is priorities. That's what strategies mean. What are your priorities? So when I say from secondary observation, and I go, yeah, this has the potential to be a threat, I go to my strategic assessment, which just is, what are my priorities in this situation? Many times the priority would be to mitigate risk. To who? To myself and my family. And so that might things like moving positions, controlling range, controlling angulation, by meaning I don't sit next to them in the theater, I move my seats, I don't on that path, we walk to the next park, or we cut our visit at the park short, we remove ourselves, I take position, no honey, you know what, instead of sitting on this bench, let's move over here and sit by this big old tree. And now we're sitting down by the big old tree, and if something should happen, the tree provides great both cover and concealment potentially. Whatever it is, right? So I look and say, what are my priorities? I have family with me, I've got young kids with me, where they are in relation to me in the park, on the pathway. Just no different than a lot of people have walked. They're out walking their kids on the left side of them. They see maybe a young girl walking a big fucking 80-pound dog. And yes, the dog's on the leash, but the girl weighs maybe 70 pounds, the dog's 80 pounds, and the dog keeps pulling on the leash. Everything, anything that runs by or moves quick, the dog is pulling. And you see the little girl getting jerked around. And that girl's walking towards you. Most people take their kid and put their kid on the right side of them. They put themselves between the dog and their child, and they move off the path because they're like, I don't trust that. So what you did was a strategic assessment. You realized that the dog is the potential threat. Right? So it was assessed it, out for a walk. That's normal, somebody walking their dog, but that girl can't seem to control it, went to secondary observation. You deemed it that is potentially a threat because of weight differentiation and all that type of stuff, dog's behavior. And then what you did a strategic assessment and said, you know what, fuck this. My kid is going on my side, or you pick your kid up and you're carrying your kid, depending on the age of the kid. You move yourself off, whatever it is. Now, when you did the strategic assessment, then the next is a tactical assessment. How can I actuate on my priorities? So the priority was to keep my kid safe. The tactics were either move the kid to the other side, put yourself between them as a barrier, pick your child up in case the dog leaped or whatever it is. And some might go, no. If I want to keep my child safe, I'm going to move my child 5 or 6 feet to that side of me between that dog. And then, maybe for most people, outcomes. They have a can of bear spray that they carry because of recent dog attacks. Maybe they have keys. Maybe they have a knife, whatever the hell it is. But they're like, I will position myself and be ready to fulfill on my strategic assessment, which is protect my child. And tactically, I will do this to do that should the threat manifest. And of course, that led to your tool assessment, the tool evaluation. What is the smartest thing for me to do, right? So, anyways, that kind of breaks down the whole gamut here, right? So, an observational assessment first is the primary assessment, environment, divide into herds, and then look for congruency or look for anomalies. When you spot off baseline or anomalies, then you bump to secondary. Secondary is, what are they doing? Are they a threat to me? If it bumps up from there, it goes to strategic assessment, which is what are my priorities? What are my strategic priorities? Then it goes to tactical assessment. How can I fulfill on my strategic goals? And then finally, tool assessment. What are the tools, natural, designed, or expedient that I have at my disposal to be, if I cannot remove myself from the situation, to dominate this situation, ensure that I am safe and that I protect my right to life, liberty, freedom, and security. So hopefully that is a...
Like we've talked in the past that, as much as people want to learn how to defend themselves from criminal violent assault, is what they more want is to understand what they need to know so they don't actually have to physically defend themselves. Obviously they want to have those skill sets, so if it does go to that, they have. But it's like, what do I need to know so it doesn't need to get to that, right? And I think this falls very much in place to support that notion, and that's why it's so important, because by having this observational assessment, how many physical situations can you actually avoid? I would say it's pretty significant, right? If you have that on the radar, does that mean that you're never going to find yourself to have to physically take action? Absolutely not. I'm just saying that if you are able to egress and remove yourself from the situation, you can't do that if you don't have an observational radar.
100%. Dustin, anything final on that?
I'll make an attempt. My internet is crashing and dying here, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. I think something to touch on. We've talked about it before, but just there's always, certain people that hear stuff like this and right away they think, yeah, you're just a bunch of paranoid, whatevers. And it's like, I think to me, it's silly. I mean, going back to the analogy of like where there's smoke, there's fire, or the analogy you just gave of, going for a walk with your kid, you see a dog. I mean, you're not paranoid. You're not staying home because you're scared. There could be a dog out there that a little kid can't control. You're not scared to go to the mall because there could be a fire. It's just you set your filter for these things and you go through life like everybody else. And it has nothing to do with being paranoid. Filter is set. You're just going through life like everyone else. But as you said, the reticular activator is set that if something was to happen, you see, feel, hear, whatever, the senses pick it up, sensory faculties, and it just makes you more aware to start kicking it up the chain.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, again, it's a very simple framework, but that's what works. KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? Simple frameworks that you have developed into natural habits. We are always, as human beings, processing information. Our senses are always on. They are never off, right? Different ones turn on to different capacities, but our senses are always pulling in information. All you have to do is build the filter, set the settings to what is going to help keep you safe. Brad, you made a comment of and the angle that we want to hit this at, which is one of the angles, which is, how many physical altercations, potentially deadly altercations, could you avoid by having this type of observational filter in place, by just taking something so simple, set the reticular activator and secondary observation, because they are a fucking legitimate threat, and therefore gets bumped into strategic assessment, tactical assessment, tool assessment, and then you execute. You are executing with speed, surprise, and a controlled violence of action that will allow you to dominate those situations. And that's what we need, because we are not the biggest, not the strongest, not the fastest, we don't have, we're not the best armed, we're not like, they have control of all of that. The bad guys determine all of that. Time, location, duration, intensity, numbers, tools, they decide all of that shit. And then they bring it to bear on some individual that they put on the X. So I think that's two sides of the coin for the power of observational assessment, which is just part of an overall situational awareness. So anyways, Dustin just decided to end it early. His internet's like, and you're done. Oh, he's back. We'll get him on so we can say goodbye. And there he is. And you're back. Okay, and we're done. So, hey, listen. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everyone that watches. Again, very simple episode, but very powerful. Please, I hope that you find value in this and you begin to set your filter, activate your radar, because it'll, again, allow you to avoid or allow you to fucking dominate. Doom on you. They think evil. We have a doom on you mindset. We are weaponized. We are ready. We are prepared. That is what we do, right? So, all right, everybody. That's it for tonight. Dustin, Brad, thank you guys so much. Always appreciate your time, your expertise, and your willingness to share with us, with the community. And for everybody else, please stay safe, stay weaponized. We're going to chat again soon, everybody. Thank you so much.